Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our engine opening series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and in this video I'm going to show you something extremely surprising. It's a move that Winter, during a game against Weiss, considered for a long time in its main line, and then eventually just at the end switched to something more normal. But I'd seen the move, I thought it was very interesting, turns out to be unknown, and it's a great little idea in the Austrian Pirc. So we're going to have a look at it. First of all, what position are we aiming for? It's e4 d6, d4 knight f6, knight c3 g6, the normal Pirc. And then we play f4, the Austrian attack, and after bishop g7, knight f3 castles, which is all the main line, we play the move bishop d2. So I mean, anyone who uses engines a lot for preparation knows that nowadays it's not about finding the best opening moves in a position. It's about finding, lines with plausible ideas that the opponent might not have thought of. And well, when I saw Winter thinking about this move, I thought, I have never seen this. I have never seen this in any book. And well, I mean, I had a little look, and it's not known in the Hierarch's opening book, which is well, quite unusual, I can tell you. I had 4 very low-rated over-the-board games in Chessbase, no correspondence game. It wasn't in the Light Chess Opening Explorer. Through gchess.com, always the good resource. There were a few dribs and drabs at chess.com, lightchess.org, but I don't think any really strong players had tried it at all. And it's really remarkable because bishop d2 really does have a lot of point. So I mean, let's just go back a little bit and see what Black's ideas are first of all, and then you'll get to grips with it. So I mean, actually in this position, one of Black's main ideas is to play c7 to c5. So if I play a move like bishop e2, we play c5, and after d takes c5, there's queen a5. And well, the pin on the knight on c3 means that there's a threat both of knight takes c4 and queen takes c5. And in principle, this is perfectly fine for Black. Now, ironically, actually, one of the lines that got quite popular, I think I've seen it recommended in at least one book, is this move a3 from White. And the idea was that after c5, d takes c5, queen a5, we'd hit the Black queen with b4. There we are. So that's quite interesting. I mean, the idea as well is that, after d takes c5, if we play something like queen takes d8, and then eventually play e5 as well. I mean, these sort of structures with the pawns on e5, pawn on f4, and the Black bishop on g7, they are supposed to be quite pleasant for White. So, I mean, that's always something that that White's quite happy to play. Ironically enough, after queen a5, Stockfish thinks that bishop d3 is the best move because it thinks that after b4, queen d8, rook b1, well, queen d8, we've got this pressure along the long diagonal. So rook b1, knight h5, knight d5, d takes c5. Actually, Stockfish thought that that Black was completely fine. I mean, White's got a lot of space, but obviously, yeah, position's a little bit weird, whereas Black's actually quite harmonious. It goes on for quite a while. I mean, all the lines are in the PGN, but yeah, I mean, basically, this idea, which was meant to stop c5, doesn't seem to. Now, the other idea is that, bishop d3 is, of course, a common move. And that's quite nice against c5. We can just go dc, because after queen a5, of course, the bishop's protecting the e4 pawn. So there's no threat of knight takes e4. I guess the slightly annoying thing is after bishop d3 is that the engines are quite happy to play knight c6. And the funny thing is after d5, knight b4, followed by c6, Stockfish even thinks that that Black is better already in this position. Now, there's a couple of reasonable moves. Castle is very reasonable, and then Black plays e5, or well, Winter against Weiss, and also Minich in the League 2 that's going on at the moment at the TCEC played bishop e2, which is quite an interesting move. And well, I mean, you're just anticipating basically the knight moving to b4. So after bishop g4, you can play d5, which is a little bit better, but it's not so bad for Black. I mean, knight a5 was played by Weiss, and that was not a good idea after b4. But I think knight b8 is a normal move, and then you're going to take the knight on f3 and go c6, queen c7. knight b d7, and yeah, you know, I mean, these positions are pretty decent for black. You know, it's the engines are not too unhappy with that. So bishop d3, knight c6. Now, I mean, the move that I played when I was professional was the move bishop e3. I won some nice games with this. The engines think that b6, queen d2, bishop b7 is the best. I mean, this is quite an interesting line for white too, because yeah, I mean, bishop d3 is quite interesting. Knight bd7, h4. In we go. You know, that's quite interesting. Although the engines think that e5 here is actually quite decent for black. And yeah, I mean, e5 is also an idea, of course. And after takes, well, we take the queens off, go knight e4. You know, white should be a little bit better here again. We've got our typical structure. But yeah, I mean, bishop e3 is well known. So why not try the move bishop d2? I mean, what's the aim of bishop d2? Actually, of course, it's aimed against c5, d takes c5, queen a5. I mean, that's the first thing. This is not going to be dangerous, of course. Also, you know, after knight c6, there's no bishop on d3, so we don't have this irritation, annoyance about knight b4. Of course, you know, bishop d2, also pretty aggressive. I mean, we're just threatening queen e2 and then castle's queenside, you know, so this is also, yeah, absolutely in the position and part of the idea. And the other more subtle thing is that, you know, I mean, white does want to play this move e5 takes, d takes e5, but, you know, of course, if you do it immediately, then after e5 takes, then, you know, black plays queen takes d1, and, well, the white setup is a little bit, well, disrupted. You know, king d1, we can't castle anymore. After knight g4, we'll be attacking f2, and knight d1, well, you know, just gives the knight some free squares somewhere. So it's, you know, it's not going to be as promising. When we play the bishop to d2, well, obviously the d file is blocked here. So yeah, e5 takes, d takes e5 is now a threat. You know, just setting up that good pawn structure, shutting out the bishop on g7. So, I mean, actually, I mean, there's a lot for black to think about. I mean, that's the key thing. I mean, it's not obvious at all. You know, there's plenty of plausible moves for black. We're going to have a look about 8 or 9, I think. And, you know, there are plenty of plausible ones. But, yeah, which one is the best? Actually, quite hard to be sure about. Let's have a look. Yeah, we'll just start with a few interesting things. I mean, if we go knight c6 first of all, what about that one? Now, yeah, the engine never believes in d5. Although I think, you know, if you're a black player facing this position for the first time, you'd be sort of wondering, there's no bishop on d3 to attack. Do I really want to allow d5? But actually, this move e5 is quite nice. D takes c5, d takes c5, knight d5, and bishop c4. And yeah, just actually quite nice. This is the line that Stockfish against Komodo were playing. Takes, bishop c4, queen c4, queen d7. Was playing rook d1 in this position. Castles also very reasonable. Stockfish actually wanted to bring the bishop back to e3, which is why it played this way. But after castles, queen c8, c3. Well, I mean, you know, between two top engines, this is probably going to end up a draw. But in a human game, this is actually very pleasant. I mean, I would be very happy to have this as white. Bishop e3, b4 coming in, expansion on the queen side, maybe even expansion on the king side somehow. You know, once black plays e6, we've got. Can I make a red arrow? Oh, look at that red. Then f6 is weak. So, I mean, actually, this is just pretty nice, actually. And, well, you'll see in the PGN, you know, I mean, there are plenty of games in there. And, yeah, you know, pretty interesting, basically. I mean, knight bd7 is a pretty normal move for black. Yeah, maybe think of going c5 or e5. Actually, here my engines just wanted to play e5, knight e8, and then this surprising move, bishop e3. Yeah, actually just aimed against the move c5. So yeah, I mean, if you don't do something quickly, then I'm just playing h4 to h5. So c5, but then I just take on here, takes. Knight c7, and then this move queen e2, which carries a very annoying tactic, actually. I mean, we're just threatening to go castles anyway, and obviously, you know, we've got ideas of h4 to h5. But if you grab the pawn on e5, I play the move rook d1, And if queen e8, I go bishop h6, a very cunning idea. You might be spotting it already, that if bishop g7 to save the exchange, we take and we go queen e5 check for king, king and knight. Very nice, huh? Not bad at all. So knight bd7, just this e5 line, very, very dangerous. Let's have a look. So after bishop d2, what else have we got? We'll just go through a number of other plausible ideas. c6 is always an idea in the Pirc. You know, looking for something like b5 maybe. I mean, there's all sorts of things you could do, but yeah, my engines just want to go bishop d3, and after knight a6, e5. You know, just and yeah, I mean the white pieces are absolutely great here. I mean, Stockfish found this idea just to try and play safely like this. But I mean, after bishop e3, f6, takes, c3, followed by castles. I mean, white's got a very pleasant position here. You know, we're going to go bishop d4. We've got lovely control over e5. I mean, yeah, if you get this sort of position all the time, that would be great. Komodo Dragon tried knight d7, and this led to an absolutely super attacking game, which I'll just show you. Knight e4, c5 e6, in we go. F takes c6, knight eg5, rook f6, queen e2. You can see how beautiful it is having the bishop on d2 here. It's stopping knight b4, queen a5, and also allowing the king to castle. So knight b6, h4, c4, and bishop e4, d5, and now just an astonishing move from Stockfish. Bishop takes g6, in we go. Rook takes h5, knight e5, queen e8 castles, knight c7, and g4. And, well, I mean, actually, all that white did was eventually move this knight away from here and go g4 to g5, and this rook here was trapped. So, yeah, you know, I mean, that was pretty good. You can see the rest of the game in there, but I mean, basically Stockfish kept complete control there. But I have to say that bishop takes g6 in this position, that's a hell of a move. I really like that one a lot. So c6, rather dangerous for black there. Just yeah, pile in through the center. a6 also quite dangerous for black. Queen e2. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing here was that if you play b5, I go e5 again, takes, take back with a d pawn again. That's pretty, you know, standard. And after knight d5 takes, I go g3, which is really nice. Knight c6, bishop g2, and yeah, this is rather unpleasant. And after rook b8, knight g5, queen d7, bishop e3. Well, we've made a second move of the bishop, but we're coming in with rook d1, and yeah, Stockfish won a very nice game against Dragon in this line, and I think it just managed to escape with black against Dragon, but yeah, still very, very nice. So I mean, here you see again, I mean, just this move bishop d2, just preparing queen e2. Castle queenside, and the fact that you're so able to castle queenside means that you know, you can play e5 quickly, because your king can be got out of the center very, 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 very quickly. You know, very, very nice indeed. We can also have a look after bishop d2. Another very typical move here for black. You know, we're just basically cycling through all the typical things that black does in the you know, in the Pirc here. I mean, bishop g4. Very, very natural. But here again, you know, this move bishop d2 is great. I mean, we just play h3, takes, and now we're ready to go castles, and we're ready to go e5, and maybe g4 or h4. You know, I mean, it's just really, you know, it's all in there really. So knight c6 is a typical move, and then again, we're not going to play d5 immediately. We're going to play queen e3. And if you go e5, well, I just take and go f5. I think queen d4 is really the best. There's some, oops, sorry, some pretty big crushes there after the move knight d4, for example. We just go, yeah, I mean, after the move knight d4, we just go castles, queen d7, g4. And I mean, we just come in. I mean, it's just huge. Lots of good examples in the PGN there. But queen d4, and then, well, castle queenside is fine. I mean, g4 looked good and simple to me, and well, you know, this just looked really, really nice for white. You know, big space advantage, two bishops, can expand on the queen side as well, king side. Yeah, you know, I mean, Komodo or Stockfish maybe can hold this with some difficulty, but you know, it's going to be very unpleasant for any human player. And the big point as well is after knight d7, we don't go d5, but we go e5. And after knight b4, castle c5, in we go with h4. No worries about it, h5, and we're just attacking there. The queen's coming round g3 to h3. It's just very, very dangerous for black here. So, I mean, I hope you can see that how many of these, normal moves from black are actually getting into quite some trouble, simply because, bishop d2, the idea is very, very aggressive there, and I mean, d5 was a move that I just suggested, because I thought, sometimes when white plays these d4 and f4 systems, against the Pirc or the modern, sometimes it, hitting in the middle is not a bad idea. But here, I mean, just e5, knight e4, bishop d3, takes, bishop g4, and well, I mean, the engines were just starting with c5 and h5. I mean, yeah, I mean, what can you say? This is just ideal attacking position for white. I mean, you're not going to complain about this at all. So d5 also not good. I mean, I think these sort of strange lines like d5. I mean, this is often what can happen when your opponent is really caught out, and I mean, I often did it myself. You start thinking, okay, there's obvious stuff, but he's probably going to know that. Is there something weird, bizarre that I can think of, that's different, that might confuse my opponent? And, well, something like d5 fits into that, but it's absolutely no good. b6 is the same, approach that we talked about against the move 6, bishop e3. But here, just bishop d3, bishop b7, queen e2. Actually, this setup is really nice against bishop b7 because the queen's got some power. So e5 to e6, it's actually great to have this e-file clear, to have the bishop on d2 rather than e3. And well, I mean, yeah, what can we do? I mean, knight b d7. I tempted my engines with that, but actually they were just taking with the f pawn. Which shows how solid this centre must be here, and just playing knight e4, and well, we basically got the nicest attacking position we could ever have. And yeah, I mean, both dragon and stockfish with white were just wiping out the other. They were having no difficulty with that at all. c5 is possible, but then we just go d5 here, a6, a4. And yeah, this is not a very good Benoni type position for black. Rook e8, even knight g5 was happening. This was really, really sharp, but it's all coming in. And again, it's all to do with the fact that the queen is supporting this e pawn. So e6 is a really big threat when it lands. So knight f8 played, very clever. Looking for the pin. Well, just showing one drawback, I suppose, having the queen on the e-file. But we just carry on like this. This was what this is actually what both Stockfish and Komodo Dragon did. And this is a really nice position for white. This pawn's weak. We've got knight e4s coming in. Yeah, I mean, a human opponent's not going to defend this against you. An engine will, but that's less of a practical problem over the board, hopefully. So yeah, I mean, that was b6, and that's also being put aside quite violently. The only thing that I vaguely thought as well I should just have a look is e5. I thought that should be too much, and well, my engines aren't at all impressed. Knight c6, yeah, we just take and go e5. I mean, the fact that you can put your centre in such a strong configuration supported by a pawn, and you're also ready just to play queen e2 and castle's queen side. I mean, that's just yeah, it's just not good enough, basically. So white was looking very strong there. So that's I've looked at all sorts of very plausible, but perhaps not the best moves. Now we're going to have a look at probably the two best options, which are to play either c5 or to play knight a6. So let's have a look at c5 first, and this is a bit of a weird one really, because after d takes c5, actually Stockfish's and Komodo's first move in this line are to play either knight a6 or knight bd7. Let's have a look at knight bd7. I think you'll only get this if your opponent's really well prepared, because yeah, I mean, it's quite an outrageous move. I mean, the idea that for Stockfish and Komodo this is sufficient compensation because the e4 pawn is a little bit weak. In fact, after bishop c4 they're playing b5, to give away a second pawn here. I mean, it's, you know, it's perfectly fine for white, but yeah, this is probably about even. Well, I don't know. Maybe white's still got a tiny little initiative there, but the engines were thinking that this would be holdable. The sharpest line there was to play e5, takes, knight g4, e6, knight c5, takes, rook takes, bishop c4, bishop e6, and then queen e2, queen b6, and castles. And yeah, I mean, black's got a little bit of pressure against the white queen side, but actually, you know, white can deal with this. And well, I mean, this is what Stockfish was going into against Komodo Dragon. And yeah, I mean, this is a slight edge for white. I mean, the pawn structure is just a little bit better. Yeah, might be tough to win it against an even player, but you know, you can play without any risk at all. You know, so not a bad line at all. And as I said, I'd be amazed if anyone played knight bd7 against you. I mean, yeah, well, then you'd really have to be, you know, properly prepared. D takes c5 is much more normal, and now, yeah, I mean, there's quite a few different lines that white can play. I mean, this was one of my favorites. I just wanted to play knight d5 and now bishop c4 like this. Actually, another idea I had was just to play bishop c4, just threatening e4 to e5. Just very pleasant. I mean, knight c6, I go e5, knight d7, bishop e3, hitting the pawn on b6, knight b6, takes, and now there were various things, but bishop b3 was quite a sharp line that Stockfish was playing, with the idea of c4. There's bishop takes b6, followed by bishop c4. I mean, yeah, you know, these are actually really sharp lines, and you know, Stockfish and Komodo were managing to keep it together with lots of tactics, but I think, you know, an unprepared opponent would find this quite difficult. I mean, there's also even just something simple like e5, takes, and bishop e3, just going for, again, you know, a slightly better ending where this bishop is blocked in by this pawn and white's just got a bit more space. You know, it's I mean, really, if anyone's going to expand on the wings, it's, you know, it's going to be white, either with h4 to h5 or maybe a4 to a5. So yeah, I mean, I find these positions very, very pleasant indeed. So yeah, I mean, knight bd7 is the best move, you know, and you know, well prepared opponent could maybe play that, although it's still, you know, I think a very nice position for white in principle. But after d takes c5, yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of nice options. I mean, I think the engine was also looking at bishop d3, knight c6, castles. This is also very sensible. Even e5 here is a good move too. And if knight d5, we go bishop e4 here, putting the bishop in a good position, and then follow up with castles. You know, always, you know, my feeling is when I see that, I always think, oh, yeah, great, you know, very nice, happy to play that. You know, poor black having just a slightly passive position there. It's not really why you know, black plays the Pirc. And then the engine's very top line was knight a6. It is a little bit weird. Yeah, it's a flexible one, really. I mean, you know, black's keeping all sorts of options open, and obviously c5 is going to be one possibility. Just waiting to see where you put this bishop, really. I mean, if you put the bishop on d3, then, you know, knight b4 things will come in. If I try to play bishop c4, then black will just play knight e4 and here. And yeah, unfortunately enough, after bishop a6, d takes c4 hits the knight, so two pieces are on prise. So that's not what you want to do. I mean, you know, for all that, you know, a move like bishop d3 is quite interesting. We go c5, d5, but then black goes rook b8, and after a4 goes knight b4, which is, you know, interesting but balanced. I mean, I had two things which I quite liked against knight a6. I mean, first of all, there was bishop takes a6 from Stockfish, which was Stockfish's main line. B takes a6 castles, and after rook b8, yeah, sometimes it was playing rook b1, sometimes it was playing b3. I mean, I quite like b3 in this position. And after c5 we go d5, and we've got some sort of Benoni position where, you know, if black doesn't react, then we're just going queen e1, f5, queen h4, bishop h6, you know the drill, knight g5, which is, you know, just actually very dangerous indeed. I mean, yeah, you know, Obviously, black's got the bishop pair, and you know, that pawn on a6 doubled is not so bad. On the other hand, you know, creating queenside counterplay, you don't have b5 and b4 to destabilize the white center. And yeah, if you go e6, takes, there's a couple of nice ideas. I mean, h3 is not bad, and I quite liked f5, to be honest. Takes, and knight h4, and yeah, I'm just going to try and follow up with bishop g5. Look, quite dangerous to me. I mean, the engine was sort of thinking, you know, Stockfish, Komodo was sort of thinking, I'm sure we can deal with that. But okay, they can deal with it. But yeah, you know, somehow for a human, it's often a little tougher. What I did like, actually, as well as a line was, well, there were a couple of lines to do with a quick e5. So, for example, instead of bishop takes a6, there was e5, knight d7, and then knight g5, which was quite shocking. And after h6, take, e6, taking and going queen f3, which is quite interesting. I mean, the black pieces are just a little bit odd. The pawns are a little bit weak, so you know, it looked quite interesting. And after c5, takes, d takes c5, position was quite unclear there. You know, it's the sort of thing that could just go quite badly for black if yeah, if he doesn't quite get it right. So this looked quite interesting. There was also another interesting variation, which was bishop takes a6, ba, and now queen e2 from pardon me, from Komodo. And after rook b8, e5, knight d7, e6, again we're making use of the fact that the bishop is on d2 and the queen is supporting this. And well, this was just a total mess, basically. Takes, castles, bishop g4, queen a6. Yeah, black's got some counterplay, but actually, yeah, you know, wouldn't mind playing white in this position. I think it's more, for an engine, this is probably not so difficult to work out precisely how black's supposed to have counterplay. For a human player, without preparation, much more difficult, I think. So, you know, there's a nice little range there of sharp lines. So, yeah, I mean, you know, looking through all of this, I really just thought, you know, that this move, bishop d2, is really, really a good idea. You know, I mean, against a whole swathe of plausible black lines, white's actually doing really, really well. The ideas, you know, are very understandable. I mean, we're playing, we want to try and negate the value of c5. We want to play e5, and we're just getting ready to castle queenside, play e5, and then play h4, h5. I mean, easy, right? And yeah, I mean, the bishop on d2, you're not ruining anything. So, you know, if black plays a really stupid move, something, you know, that that doesn't make any sense at all, well, we just play bishop d3 in castles, you know, and we've got our ready-made attack there. And I think there's only a couple of lines, you know, so c5, dc, knight bd7, and this line knight a6, where you say, you know, black's really having a stab at reaching equality, but even then the positions are, you know, quite unusual. So yeah, again, you know, a black player who's not really up with this, not really well prepared, will have, you know, definite problems, I think. So I would say, you know, have a look at all the engine games I've run, all the analysis that I've run, you know, in the associated PGN to this video, and go give it a go, because yeah, I think yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting line. And as I said, I haven't seen it in any books. It seems to be completely new. So yeah, thank you very much. Winter just shows you it's not just the top engines you've got to look at. Put some of the weaker engines on some positions, and they'll find some interesting stuff. They've all got their own perspective on chess, and that perspective is sometimes quite surprising, just like this. Well, there we are. If you liked the video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, take a look at the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which is full of material like this, or all of the other videos on this channel, almost 250, 300 I think now, so really so much engine chess on here. And in any case, you know, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.